You are listening to the Optic Blast Broadcast, a hipster goblin media production.
Welcome to the Optic Blast Broadcast. This is your corner of the internet where we will discuss everything comic book related. I am one of your hosts. My name is Blake, and with me, I got my buddy Dylan here. And we're here to bring you the comic news, just discuss all fun things comics. And I'm going to let my boy Dylan introduce himself.
Yeah, man, I'm Dylan. I'm one of the hosts on the Optic Blast broadcast. I'm pretty new to the comic book world. I love a lot of comic characters like Spider-Man, The Flash, Batman, Avengers, X-Men, and everything in between, man. So, but I've always been more of like a movie guy, video game kind of guy. Even the shows, I never really dove into the comic world, and so Blake is a little more experienced in that side of things. So, we're gonna kind of take this journey together. I feel like, and yeah, just really dive into comics and talk about all things comic book characters.
Yeah, awesome, man. And like he's saying, he's a little bit of the new school, and I'm definitely the old school. I was one of those kids that grew up in the '90s, and just was introduced to comic books by the cartoon shows. And once I got into them, man, X-Men took over, and Jim Lee was my dude. And so I've always kind of just got into comics and been a part of it. So it's kind of a neat dynamic. You got the old guy like me, and then you got the young guy like Dylan, and together we will help guide you through the comic book universe, right? So thanks for joining us. This is our debut episode number 1. You've made it. We're starting this episode with what brought so many of us into the comic book world, and that is X-Men, the animated series. We're going to dive deep into the new X-Men97 series, how it collaborates, how it connects to the X-Men97 series. We'll talk about the original. We'll go over comic book storylines and Easter eggs we found. But this is going to be the highlights of this first debut episode. So thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad you're here. But before we get to all of that, we have a few segments that we're going to go over to entertain. And number 1, starting it off, is comic news. Dylan, take it away.
Yeah, man, comic news. Every time you guys tune into an episode of the Optic Blast broadcast, you can expect all the latest news within the comic book world. This can span between comic books, characters on the big screen, even video games, and so pretty much everything in between. So, kicking it off with our first piece of news for this week, Marvel Unlimited is offering a discount code that gives you a 1-month subscription for just 97 cents. So when you sign up, be sure to use the promo code X-Men97 at checkout. This offer will be valid through April 15th, so you only got a few days left by the time you're hearing this. Be sure to sign up. I know me and Blake are both subscribers of this app, and it's awesome, dude. This app will give you access to thousands of comics at the press of a button, and it also includes comics that we're actually going to be kind of talking about today that relate to the episodes. I believe it's called X-Men Adventures, is like the comic version of the X-Men animated series. So if you haven't, make sure you check those out as well. I've had a chance to kind of dabble in reading some of those, but I'll definitely be diving deeper into that world as a whole, both through the comics and the shows as the new episodes release. And our second piece of news for you guys today is a little more towards the entertainment side of things. Marvel and Fox have been in talks for quite some time about bringing the X-Men into the MCU, if you didn't already know that. And it's finally happening with Deadpool 3, which is also now known as Deadpool and Wolverine. And I'm super excited for this. This film has had so many leaks and rumors about cameos on so many different characters. The first trailer is already released. We had glimpses of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine in that classic blue and yellow suit from the comics. Clips of a slightly different version of the TVA that's a little bit different from what we've seen in previous shows and things like that, especially the Loki show. And there's also different scenes from the Infinity Saga being shown like on a bunch of TVs, which I thought was pretty cool, and a shot of Professor X, and even a Secret Wars comic laying in the sand at the very end. There's also been some rumors about like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man kind of showing up at some point, doing along with a lot of other characters and different variants of the characters that we already know and love. So I believe this movie will be out in July of July 26th, and I really can't wait, and I'm super excited for that. So, Blake, do you got any comments or anything? Are you
Yeah,
excited
dude.
for all that?
What about in the in the Deadpool? I think the first Deadpool Wolverine trailer I saw was over the Super Bowl. And but what about in the trailer when they're showing Deadpool all the screens like with the Infinity and all that stuff going on, and he sees Captain America and he like salutes him.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah, dude, I can't wait for the Deadpool Wolverine movie. That's definitely going to be a Optic Blast broadcast episode right there for sure. We're gonna have to go check that thing out. But yeah, dude, that's probably the biggest MCU movie news that there is this year that I can think of. Is that movie coming out?
Yeah, for sure. I believe. I mean, really, just other than this, the X-Men 97 coming out.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not a whole lot going on within the Marvel universe, the MCU as a whole. But I really think once we get kind of over this hump of kind of almost like a dead space, I
Yeah.
guess. I feel like it'll start to pick up because then we're gonna be like going into like Secret Wars and like kind of there's like a ton of stuff going on like about that that I probably won't go into in this episode. Maybe in the future I'll talk about it a little bit more. But yeah, dude, I'm super excited, super pumped for the MCU and what it has going on.
Yeah, and I'll second what you said a second ago about the X-Men 97 promo code. So if you had told young Blake one day you'll be able to have this device in your hand and all the comic books of the Marvel comic books from all the past you can just access them and read them, it'd blow my mind, right? So I love getting in that thing and the Marvel Unlimited app and just checking everything out. It's been awesome. It's kind of brought me back to comic books. It's kind of brought me back into almost like nostalgia at all points in my hands. And then plus I can research and read and just understand what's going on in the comic book world. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, for sure. I know it's been a huge tool for me, especially kind of being new to comics. I feel like there's a lot of comics out there and a lot of different storylines and a lot of different runs and things like that. And it's like kind of overwhelming. I feel like at this point to try to get into. And I feel like this app has definitely helped me out quite a bit. So I'm really excited to use it more and dive into some more of that, man. So, but that's it for our news today. And I believe that Blake is going to be showing us some pretty awesome collectibles today. So we'll be right back with that.
All right, thanks for waiting for us. Here we are. We're back. It's toy time. So what we want to do is one of these segments is we want to go over collectibles, action figures, toys. I know we don't want to call them toys because, everything needs to be action figures, but it's toys. And today I have quite a cool, I tried to keep it in the X-Men theme. And what we have here is a Funko Pop Sentinel. So let's get this guy on the camera. One thing about the Optic Blast broadcast is if you're listening to this, awesome. Thank you. It'll be on all your streaming platforms, but you can also watch it. So we have the video up. So on this video here, you'll see this giant bobblehead. His head is just a little bit smaller than mine, and he is a Sentinel. So these big bad boys would hunt down the X-Men, halt mutant, go after it. The debut episode of X-Men 97, you see these guys get totally thrashed by the X-Men. But if you're an X-Men fan, you know this guy. I love that he's a bobblehead. It's huge. He stands. He's got his little blaster hand there, ready to go. He is a pop. He's a Funko Pop. I know if you're a Funko collector, you're probably really mad at me right now because this guy's open. But listen, I open all my toys. So that's what I do, except the ones hanging up back there because they're actually from when I was a kid. They're from the 90s. I don't open them. But new stuff, I open it. I play with it. We have fun with it. Not only do you get one bobblehead with this guy, but you also, one of the cooler things, you get two. You get this little Wolverine, a little Wolverine bobblehead. He's got the old classic suit on. Let's see if it'll zoom. There it is. He's got his claws out. He's ready to attack the giant Sentinel. So you can have these two go at it. Even though he's huge, Wolverine would still win this fight. Just so you know, this is the giant Funko box that it comes in. Funko Pop. This thing's huge. I did keep the box. We'll put him back in and then we'll have him hanging up on a shelf or something. But he is awesome. I got this thing on Amazon. No joke, like $25. So if you're looking for a cool desk prop a nice piece of Marvel memorabilia to celebrate the new X-Men launch, to take you back. This is an awesome thing. If you put this on your desk at work and somebody comes by, they're definitely going to be like, what the heck is that, right? It just totally takes over the scene. I have a scene in my office of all my old X-Men action figures, and he's actually in the center of it, and they're all built around him because he's so big. I have a lot of the Toy Biz X-Men action figures, and we'll go through some of those throughout this broadcast. Not this broadcast, but the Optic Blast broadcast show over time, and kind of go over some of those. But that is your toy for today. Again, it's a Funko Pop. It's number 1054 from Funko Pop X-Men. It's on the Amazon right now. Like I said, probably 20-something bucks. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check it out. And kind of talking about the toys and the X-Men, this whole episode is themed around X-Men, and we're going to really dive into X-Men97. X-Men animated series brought many of us into comics. Myself, it's why I have such a love for the X-Men. They're kind of like the core of my comic book knowledge and where it all began. Before we jump into the actual meat of the episode, right? Let's talk about our favorite X-Men and why. So Dylan, who's your favorite X-Men character and why?
Yeah, man. So growing up, like, I kind of grew up with more so the Fox X-Men, obviously not being super into actually reading comics. So that's what I kind of got. And I know, like, some people have their opinions about the way they adapted the X-Men to the big screen originally on through Fox, but I'm a little biased on Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. He's always been one of my favorite characters, not just in the X-Men, but just in general. I just think he's just awesome, dude. But I will say, after like getting into watching this animated series and getting a glimpse of kind of what these characters kind of look like almost in the comics and the animated series, I got to say Cyclops is slowly making his way up the list, man. I'm kind of torn between Wolverine and Cyclops, but I don't know if I could really choose one or the other. So those would probably be my top two if I had to guess.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Hey, Cyclops is a man after my own heart. Cyclops is absolutely my favorite X-Man. And hey, I know people like to hate on the Fox X-Men movies, but people have to remember there's a whole generation, Dylan included, that was their introduction to comic books. That was their introduction. And let me tell you, from being a kid watching the 90s series, when the late 90s rolled around, early 2000, and there was an announcement that there was an X-Men movie coming out, dude, we were all so hyped for that. I remember going to see X2 in the theaters, and I know, like, it's not like kosher. Comic book fans dog the Fox movies, but X2 to me is still one of my all-time favorite comic book movies, man. You had that opening scene with Nightcrawler going in there and just taking everybody out. They didn't do Cyclops any justice in those movies, but I think that's probably one of the big gripes that comic book fans have, because Cyclops is this awesome character, and even the original animated series kind of drops it a little bit. I mean, he is good in that, but it's not really accurate to who he is in the comics. And the movies definitely dropped the ball on our boy Cyclops. But when you're a comic book fan and you're into X-Men, you put some respect on Cyclops' name, right? And this new series, we're going to get into it, but they definitely put some love on our dude. And this is the Optic Blast broadcast. So, we might be a little bit, partial to Cyclops, but he's definitely my favorite one. A few other notable characters I would say are probably Colossus. I love Colossus. I love how he's this gentle giant. He's like into art, but he's also this huge metal tank that just destroys everything. Don't make Colossus mad, and then I gotta love my boy Nightcrawler. He's teleporting. He looks like a demon, but he's if you follow the old X-Men animated series, he's actually like a monk or but he looks like a demon. He's an awesome character. He kind of brings some like positive hope and like faith to base things to the comics and the comic book world. So those are definitely my team right there. I would go with those guys. All right. So we're hyped, we're primed, we're pumped, we're ready. We're about to enter the danger room and check out and talk about X-Men97, the season premiere, and the newest episode that just launched, featuring the Goblin Queen. So let's get ready, get the Danger Room loaded up, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. Like I said, the Danger Room is loaded and ready. It's time to get into it, guys. Let's talk about X-Men 97, the season premiere, and boy, do we have a lot to discuss. Like I said, we're going to go over all 3 episodes today. If you have not watched this and you want to be spoiler-free, this is your time to pause the podcast, get over to Disney Plus, watch all 3 episodes, come back to the broadcast, unpause it so you can understand what we're talking about. We don't want to spoil this for you because there's a lot that happens. But man, let's just talk about it, discuss some of our favorite parts. I'm just going to kick it off like this. Being a kid who grew up in the 90s, every Saturday morning, it was me, my bowl of cereal, and the X-Men theme song hit. Yeah, you heard that, and it was on. I was in the gym on Wednesday morning, and the premiere started, and I had my headphones on. I was doing my cardio, and I hit play, and I started watching, and that intro hit. And man, it was like instant nostalgia. It took me right back, and I love that they took the intro and they modernized it, but it's still the same intro. And there's just so many cool little things, Easter eggs and stuff they put in that intro. But hearing that theme again and seeing how the X-Men are brought back to life in this X-Men 97 series, man, that just that set it off for me. I knew from the minute the intro was done that the X-Men were in good hands. And it was very, very exciting for me. Some of the things that are kind of popped out to me about this episode, kind of go into it first. This is the Optic Blast Broadcast. Is I feel like we finally see the Cyclops that comic book fans have been clamoring for all these years. He's not presented well in the Fox movies, really. He's not presented accurately. It's a little better in the animated series, but I feel like the old animated series, they really wanted to push Wolverine. So Cyclops doesn't quite get to shine, but in this series, he definitely gets to shine. You know, you kind of see that first Cyclops fight scene when they start throwing down, and you see the man beam walking all over the place, using his concussive optic blast to push himself around and fight all the different members in that warehouse type scene. So seeing Cyclops actually throw hands, and Dylan, did you ever play like the Marvel versus Capcom games or anything like that? The old X-Men versus Street Fighter or anything?
I've heard of the games, and I feel like I probably owned them at one point, but I don't really have that many memories of it, unfortunately.
Yeah. So those games are they're fighters, 2D fighters, and in those games, like Cyclops has got hands, like he's like Ryu or Ken, like he's on their level with his showing off his judo skills, his kung fu skills, which is all canon in the comics, by the way. Cyclops is one of the sickest hand-to-hand combat guys, and to see all that transfer over. It was like seeing my Marvel vs. Capcom 2 main Cyclops show up on an animated series and just start throwing down. I love they break his visor and they're like, take his visor. And he's like, oh no, I surrender. And then he's like, not, and he just blows up the whole thing. That's like a perfect 90s throwback. In the 90s, Dylan, we as kids, we thought it was cool to say, yeah, I'm going to do that. Not, so they throw that in there. What do you think of Dylan? What do you think about Cyclops? What do you think about our boy on there?
Yeah, so I mean, it was definitely cool seeing the many different versions of the characters that are not really what I'm used to, because like I kind of talked about earlier, like the Fox X-Men is like my X-Men essentially. So seeing the different version of them, especially when it comes to even their powers, and some of the way they act a little bit, like Cyclops coming in and just being like, yeah, I'm definitely the good guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like him, like you said, whenever they take his visor off and it's just like that huge explosion and he blows up like the entire warehouse. Like, yeah. I feel like that's not something you would have seen from the Scott that's in the Fox X-Men. You know? So it was definitely really cool to see that kind of different side of them. And so, yeah, man, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. What about when they're in the plane and they're flying into the Sentinels in the desert, and the Sentinel like freaking attacks the plane and just like rips it apart, and they're all falling. This actually answered a question that me and my friends would debate as kids. So many people don't know this. They assume that Cyclops' blast is like a laser or a heat blast like Superman, right? Like he's like kind of like Superman heat vision, but that's actually not Cyclops' power. It's a concussive blast. So it's pure concussive energy. So it's like throwing a brick through something. I mean, this blast is not heat, you know? So as kids, we always wondered, could Cyclops shoot the ground and blast himself up into the sky and like fly? He never does it in the comics. We don't ever see that. But I if it's a pushing thing, it's a concussive, like kinetic pushing motion. Could he do that? This episode, man, it answered that. The plane gets ripped apart by the Sentinel, and they're all falling. And so Rogue and Storm look at each other, and they're like, "All right, here we got to grab everybody." Morph, our boy Morph, turns into Archangel and starts catching people, and they're all flying to the ground. And Cyclops is just like falling, and I'm thinking like, dude, who's gonna get Cyclops? But he doesn't seem worried about it, and he's like, "I'll meet you guys on the ground." When he said that, I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." And then he like got into like skydive position, and he optic blasted the ground, and it's it's like the clouds part. This huge red beam hits the ground, and he like slowly descends by blasting the ground, and he has the most epic superhero landing ever, right? Like he hits the ground, and then he stands up, and they all rally behind him. It's like, dude, I'm a nerd. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about that, dude. Like, man, that's the dude right there. So, gotta love that. Love that version of Cyclops we're seeing, and I'm so excited to see this continue to go on and see our guy kind of be brought to light. You notice the internet is starting to be like I'm in a bunch of different like Reddits and forums, and people are starting to be like, hold up, Cyclops is a beast? Like Cyclops is the man? Because like you're saying, Dylan, nobody really presented Cyclops like that except the comics, and so now we're kind of seeing him. I love another good note is Storm. Storm, man, like she's super underrated. She's an Omega level mutant. The Sentinels say that Omega level threat detected. Like that's straight out of the comics. Like so there's different tiers of mutants, and you only have a few Omega level mutants, and these are like the most powerful mutants the Sentinels don't want to dance with, and Storm is definitely top tier on that. And so when Cyclops hits his little thing and he's like, "Hey Storm, give him the forecast," you know she's getting ready to break bad. And she always has some epic speeches. Like Storm can't do anything if I feel like without making some sort of epic speech, right? I forgot what she says. Something like desert sands, take these ancient relics of hatred away or something, right? And she like Storm makes this huge tornado in the sands and has lightning strike the sand, turning it into glass. And she throws a giant like glass hurricane and just destroys all the Sentinels. And I was like, bro, they just put so much respect on Storm's name with that. Because the original series, she would always fly in the sky and make like a lightning bolt strike, or maybe like some snow blow down on somebody. Maybe she'd make it foggy. But this series is like, nah, we're going to show you this lady controls the weather, like the weather, you know? So speaking of Storm destroying Sentinels, I know Dylan, if you're kind of your intro is kind of the Fox movies, I think there's like a cameo of a Sentinel in one movie, and then like one of the newer ones, it's not new anymore. I think it was Days of Future Past show like a really weird version of the Sentinels. But so this is kind of probably your introduction to like the big purple robots trying to hunt down all the mutants, you know, on behalf of the government. You know, what did you think about that, man? Like this is a whole new character, a whole new enemy lineup for you.
Oh yeah, dude, it was definitely interesting seeing them. Like I feel like I've definitely heard about the Sentinels, but like actually seeing them as far as like when it comes to like just seeing those movies, they don't really mentioned a whole lot. I don't really know a whole lot about them, and so seeing them just kind of come in and just like you were talking about, just like ripping the plane apart and everything, I was like, oh man, these guys mean business. But then I kind of had to do a double take because then Storm gave him the business, and I was like, oh, okay, okay, maybe these guys are. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, it was cool.
If you go back and watch the original X-Men animated series, which I saw some article and it said, I don't know, I mean, I'm just quoting an article, so I don't know if this is true, but it said that since X-Men 97's debut on Disney Plus, the original series has increased streaming like 400 or 500%. Like everyone's like, okay, I guess I'm going to go back and watch the old one. But if you go back and watch the first couple episodes of X-Men, the animated series from the 90s, the intro episodes are called Night of the Sentinels. And so they kind of like introduce me as a kid. I see this. And back when I was a kid, Pizza Hut gave away Night of the Sentinels, Inner Magneto, like VHS tapes that came with your like personal pan pizza. And you got like an X-Men comic. Like this was like the Happy Meal of Pizza Hut when I was a kid. It is the coolest freaking thing. Me and my buddies all had the little tapes and the comics. But those Sentinels, it introduces you to the Sentinels, and the Sentinels were a formidable threat. I mean, they're giant robots. That's how Jubilee gets introduced in the series. Is she's just at the mall hanging out, and all of a sudden the Sentinel just shows up and starts ripping the mall apart to catch one mutant. Which I always like looking back, like it's funny to me that the Sentinels are like the government is funding them, like well Trask, but they are in cahoots with the government in the beginning because like the government sees mutants as a threat. And so we need to have something to defend us against these mutants, and all mutants are going to have to get registered. This is a constant theme in the X-Men, and we'll kind of go into that in a little while about kind of some of the racial tension and things like that the original writers of the X-Men, they were coming up in that era of time, trying to fight for equality. And so a lot of that mirrored into the X-Men comics as they wrote them. And it just trickles through. It's a constant theme, and so these Sentinels are actually kind of like supposed to be part of the government. And they just rip malls apart to find one teenager, which I was like, what the heck? But they're formidable and they're tough in the beginning. The X-Men still rock them. But, the very beginning of X-Men, the animated series, you lose Morph and you lose Beast right off the bat. I mean, they come in. Poor Morph never made it into the intro. Like he's a founding character and he's never in the intro until X-Men97, the new series. They got Morph in the intro now, but he dies like right off the bat in the beginning, and Beast gets put in jail because the Sentinels, they can't take them all. But now go fast forward to where the X-Men are now. Man, they wrecked those Sentinels so bad. Like Master Mold shows up and he's like the big final boss of Sentinels. And he had lasted no chance at all. Like the X-Men just destroyed him, man. So loved seeing the Sentinels get wrecked. Loved the whole desert scene. Really just kind of reintroducing the X-Men. They fought as a team. Like that's one thing people sleep on with the X-Men. Like you have your Avengers, and don't get me wrong, the Avengers have their own place, but this is me, and I'm a little bit probably like, I'm such an X-Men fanboy but I really think they're the best team fighters in Marvel. Captain America is an awesome leader, and he can call out the best in people, and he can put together a sick team. But when it comes to X-Men, like they live together, they're family. They're the only family they have. They've been outcast by humans. They've been outcast by their family. And so they've made a family, and like they know how to fight together as a team with Cyclops in that central point calling all the shots. Super, super cool. Let's move on and talk a little bit about kind of one of the controversial and like shocking moments of the new series. And that's, Professor X is gone, and his last will and testament is left. Again, you shouldn't be listening to this if you haven't watched this, because this is huge spoilers everywhere. This is going to be a total spoiler broadcast all times. But Magneto inherits everything. Xavier leaves everything to Magneto, including the mansion, everything, and the X-Men. And Magneto is now the leader. He's the new Professor X. Their arch nemesis Magneto is now the leader. And Dylan, you talk about watching the Fox movies, and that's kind of like your point. What do you think about Magneto leading the X-Men?
Oh, dude, it's definitely interesting. It took me by surprise. Actually, I do have a question for you. You may not know this.
Sure.
But does the animated series end with Professor X dying?
Yeah. So, okay. I don't think 97 has gotten into this yet, but from what I remember, I actually haven't caught up. I watched all the animated series. I'm on season 4 right now on the animated series, like rewatching it as an adult. I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's not dead. I'm pretty sure Professor X went with Lilandra who's his space honey. That's his girl. You know, she's from the Shi'ar Empire, and they're a thing. I'm pretty sure he got like sick and left with her to go maybe get better on her planet or on, I don't know. I can't really remember, but I don't really think Professor X is dead. But for all purposes, he's not coming back to Earth. And so I think they're just saying like he died, right?
I gotcha.
I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how that went down. I'm gonna have to look that up now.
Yeah, that definitely took me by surprise, and honestly, it kind of like you were talking a little bit about earlier, but it's kind of encouraged me to go back and actually watch the original series. So I've been starting that a little bit, and also reading the comics kind of along with it. But as for Magneto, though, like I'm definitely very skeptical. I feel like I think it was a conversation with you that we had like a few days ago, but like you kind of were talking about how like Magneto was like a morally gray character.
Yeah.
And so like you kind of just don't know what he's doing. You don't like really know his next move. You know, is he really gonna, um, lead the X-Men and honor Professor X's memory, or is he going to like? Is there something like that he's cooking under the radar that we don't really know about? Like, and like that's what kind of keeps me almost on edge. Is like, especially in that second episode. Like, I was like, man, like when is it gonna happen? When like he's gonna betray them. He's gonna do something. Like what's gonna happen? I feel like the X-Men were also feeling that way, so I feel like I was feeling their feelings alongside with them,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, think about the X-Men. Magneto's like their arch nemesis, man. Like, I will make an argument that Mr. Sinister is a bigger nemesis to the X-Men than Magneto is, but they are right there. The only reason I will say that is because Magneto is morally gray, and sometimes he moves a little bit to the good side, and then sometimes he goes evil, to the bad side. But he's in the between, whereas Mr. Sinister is just straight evil nonstop. This dude is a plague. But with Magneto, episode 2 is basically here's some comic book stuff for you. Uncanny X-Men number 200 from the 1963 bracket. That is called the Trial of Magneto, and he's got the same uniform on with the M. That's his superhero uniform. Like when he wears that, he's being a good guy. And Magneto in the comics has gone back and forth so many times. It makes your head spin because this dude he's so conflicted. I really do think that. He's an awesome character because of that confliction that he faces. But when he's got that M suit on, that's like his superhero suit, basically. Like that's when he's supposed to be a good guy. And that comic is the Trial of Magneto. That's basically what episode 2 is. They basically took that comic and kind of made their own version of it for the X-Men 97. What about when he takes Storm, all the people attack, the X-Men are trying to defend him, and they get in and they try to shoot Magneto with that gun that would remove his powers. Storm doesn't, you gotta love Storm, dude. She doesn't know what kind of gun that is. She just sees Magneto's about to get blasted, and she throws herself in the line of fire to save Magneto, which is crazy to me. Like this is their guy that they have fought for years, but now she's kind of like arguing a little bit of like moral good. She's like, hey guys, we gotta give him a chance. This is what Professor X wanted, and we love Professor X, and we gotta trust him in this. Professor X always saw the good in Magneto, and I believe that Magneto is conflicted and morally gray a lot because of his love for Charles. These guys are best friends, and they have a really hardcore difference of opinion. But I think the good in Charles brings out the good in Magneto. And with Charles being gone or essentially dead, it compels Magneto to lean into what he's trying to be a better man. I feel like, I mean, this is just me. I feel like Magneto's trying to be a better man. But when he took that crew after the attack and he saw Storm lose her powers, he cut the sickest promo. This is what you do. This is what she gets for trying to help you. And I'm thinking, he's raising them up and it's getting cold and like he's raising them up in the atmosphere. I'm thinking Magneto is about to kill everybody. Like, time to snap, because that's what our boy does when he gets mad. He just snaps and starts killing everybody. And but he doesn't. He says something like, and you might remember the line. I don't remember the exact line, Dylan, but he says something like, I'm trying. Don't make me regret this. Like, don't make me be Magneto, guys. I'm trying to be Eric right now, but that's such a cool point. to see Magneto. I'm very interested to see where he goes with this, and where the X-Men definitely go with this. So let's move into. So we've kind of talked about the first 2 episodes. Let's talk about this last episode. Now, if you're listening to the broadcast, we're recording this the day before Easter, so the new episode's not out. It'll be out by the time this releases, but this is where we are in our time. We're, like I said, we're in the days of future past right now. So, let's talk about this episode 3, man. What did you think, Dylan? Coming in with really not much knowledge, talk about it. What did you think about episode 3, man?
It definitely was interesting. There was a lot. Was it what'd you call it? The Goblin Queen? Was that what it was? Yeah. So
Yep.
like, I had no idea like what that was. I didn't like. There was a lot of just a lot of stuff that I just was like, wow, I don't really know what's going on, but I'm here for the ride, I guess. And I feel like that was just kind of that episode for me. It was really cool. But it was I feel like I was just alongside the first 2 episodes into the third, like it was just introducing me to a whole new world. I feel like almost. So that's really just my overall. Like it was all new. I feel like so.
Yeah,
It was
man. Awesome. So kind of gives you some background. The Goblin Queen, Madeline Pryor, is part of this huge storyline, and you can actually check it out on Marvel Unlimited. Marvel Unlimited should probably throw us some money as much as we're going to be promoting this thing, right? But Marvel Unlimited, you can check the whole storyline out. They organize it for you, and you can read the Inferno storyline. Inferno storyline is kind of one of the essential pieces of X-Men lore, and it introduces so much. It's a little different than this Goblin Queen episode was, but I feel like they took the entire Inferno storyline, condensed it into a 30-minute episode, made it their own thing, and they pulled it off. Like, I give kudos to these writers because they crushed it, man. So kind of the thing is, we're introduced to Scott and Jean in X-Men97 kickoff. Jean's pregnant, they're getting ready to have a baby. They're going to leave the X-Men because it's time to go raise a family. Scott's conflicted, Jean's not. She's ready to move on. But then Magneto shows up, and they're like, well, dang, we ain't going anywhere because this is weird. What are we going to do? They're still going back and forth. And all of a sudden, end of episode 2, there's a huge cliffhanger. This lady knocks on the door. They think it's Storm coming back after she lost her powers. But no, it's another Jean. And then as soon as I saw that on the end of episode 2, I'm a kind of a fan of shows releasing on like weekly basis, because I love cliffhangers and I love like wondering what's going to happen next week. If X-Men97 had dropped the whole season in one day, I probably would have called out of work and just sat there and watched it all. But I'm so glad that they are spreading it out, right? So that cliffhanger, you come in and there's 2 Jeans. B starts running some tests, and we find out that this is actually the real Jean Grey. And we don't know when they got swapped. We don't know when she showed up, but the Jean who just had a baby is actually a clone. Cyclops married a clone. Cyclops has a kid with a clone. It's not the real Jean. And that's like a mind-blowing thing. In the comics, it's not quite like that, but I kind of like what X-Men97 did with it. So definitely check out the Inferno storyline if you're interested in kind of knowing what Madeline Pryor really, kind of how that really happened. I won't spoil that for you. I'll let you read that. But this episode was cool. I really liked how they did it. I love the horror aspect to it. I mean, it essentially turned the X Mansion into a haunted house, right? And so the stuff they went through with that just kind of shows you the power that Jean has. It's a clone of Jean, but her power to kind of make everybody's minds kind of go crazy, and everything they see kind of brought a good horror aspect to it. A Sinister was in there pushing those buttons too. Kind of figure out the whole thing is actually a ploy by Mr. Sinister just to get the DNA and make this like child, between Cyclops and Madeline Pryor. In the original X-Men animated series, there's a whole storyline with Mr. Sinister, and he's trying to abduct Cyclops and Jean because he wants to take their DNA and make a mutant. That's the whole thing. So he actually pulls it off. He makes a clone of her, and that's how he pulls it off. In saying all of this, that baby is Cable. So I don't know if you know that, Dylan. I don't want to assume your comic book knowledge.
Yeah, I did not.
Yeah, so that baby is Cable. So Cyclops and Madeline Pryor's child is Cable. So Cable, that's kind of like one of my gripes. And I'm going to do this. This is my public apology to Jean Grey from the original animated series, right? I went through and watched, I'm on, like I said, season 4 or something, somewhere in there right now. But I had a big beef, a big critique going through as an adult and watching this. There's a scene where they fight Cable, and Jean scans his mind, and she realizes that Cable is Cyclops' son. And she doesn't tell Cyclops. She says it to herself. She's like, Cyclops, that's your son. But she doesn't say it to him. He's off fighting. And she never again in the series ever mentions a word about it. And I've held that against her. I was like, what a punk, man. You're not going to tell your husband, or they're actually not actually married in the animated series because it was more, anyway, we'll go into that another time. But she doesn't tell her husband that he has a kid and that her kid is in the future and he's this like super awesome, apocalypse fighting mutant. Like, that's your son. Like, she doesn't say anything to Cyclops about it. And so I held that against her. And I was like, man, Jean's kind of a punk in the original series. But now I know why. Because the X-Men97 writers have set this up. When she scans Cable's mind on the end of episode 3 of X-Men97, you see Madeline. It's a really sad scene, actually. You see Madeline Pryor with baby Cable, and they have to send him to the future because he's been infected with this techno-organic virus, and there's no cure in our timeline for it. So Bishop is going to take him to the future to hopefully cure him, and that's where the story's going. So you have a mother with her baby, and she's basically telling him goodbye because he's going to die if he stays in our timeline. And as she's telling him goodbye, I believe that she's telepathically imprinting this memory because she keeps saying like, "Hey, remember this," and then she sends him off. And if you listen to that whole little speech, I believe that when old school animated series Jean scanned Cable's mind and saw who he was and saw that it was Cyclops' son, she didn't say it's our son. She said that's your son. So Jean knew that wasn't her kid. At some point in time, Cyclops is going to have a kid with Madeline Pryor. And she kept that old school animated series, Jean, kept that secret to herself because she didn't want to screw up the timeline. So to me, that's like a huge self-sacrificial move to know that your husband or your mate is going to have a kid with somebody else in the future. You're not really sure how or why, but you just keep that to yourself because you don't want to, make that not happen. You don't want to mess with time. Actually put some respect on old school Jean for me, man. So I apologize to you, Jean Grey from the original animated series. You're not a punk. You did a good thing. You sacrificed yourself for the universe. I guess you're all right in my book. All right. So a few little Easter eggs. Let's move into Easter eggs before we wrap this thing up, man. There's tons of Easter eggs in the X-Men97. The original animated series was full of Easter eggs. There was like cameos nonstop. It's one of my favorite things to see. They're keeping that tradition alive in Morph. Morph is basically a walking Easter egg. Tomorrow's Easter, so Easter eggs. Morph is basically an Easter egg. What are some of the mutants he's transformed into? I remember he transformed into the Blob. Wolverine says something like, "Hey, Morph, belly up," right? And then he like turns into the Blob and he bounces off of him. Again, the teamwork aspect, top notch.
It kind of threw me off whenever because I was really confused because I didn't really know much about Morph, I guess.
Yeah.
And whenever he walked in as Xavier, and he was walking, and I was like, "What is going on? You just were talking about how he's dead, and now all of a sudden he's here and he's not even in a wheelchair. Like, what's happening?"
Yeah, man.
I was so confused.
He turned Xavier, that's a good one. He turns into Archangel to save him from the flight. Spiral, he turned into Spiral, which she's a cool character that she's not super known about, but he's like raises all 6 arms or whatever. Sabretooth, Wolverine's up in a tree, being emo Wolverine, and he's like, he turns into Sabretooth to kind of cheer him up, which I don't really get that because Wolverine usually like Berserker Barrage hatred for Sabretooth, but I guess if it's Morph as Sabretooth, it's fun to spar. I don't know. But yeah, Morph is an awesome walking Easter egg there, turning into all these like cameos. He turned into Psylocke. Psylocke's my girl. I'll let it be known right now on this this broadcast right here that's my favorite X-Men female character is Psylocke. I've always loved her. Awesome character. But he turns into her for a second. He turns into Magic for a second. So he He's an awesome Easter egg. Hey, did you catch, I know you're a Spider-Man guy, Dylan. I don't know if you caught this. There's a scene where a newspaper's flying by and it gets stuck on something. And it says on the headline, "Is Spider-Man a mutant?" Did you see that?
Oh wow, no, I did not catch that at all. That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome though.
Yeah, I thought that was cool because there's a crossover. As a kid, when this happened on Fox Kids, there's an X-Men Spider-Man animated series crossover episode. Definitely check that out. It's on Disney Plus. But that crossover was so cool as a kid, and to see that Spider-Man exists in the X-Men97 universe, and the newspapers are wondering, like, he's got powers, maybe he's a mutant. It kind of makes me think maybe at some point X-Men97 might bring our favorite webhead into the mix. Might just be a little Easter egg to kind of get us thinking about that. A few other kind of Easter eggs we saw. We already talked about the trial of Magneto. It's basically episode 2. When Madeline Pryor is going through all the memories, she sees a bunch of images. A lot of those are comic book covers from different comic books, like your Uncanny X-Men. 136 is the Child of Light and Darkness. It's got Cyclops holding like a dead Jean Grey, or that's straight from there. Jean and Scott getting married is like a picture, and Madeline Pryor breaks it. That's actually from X-Men Volume 2, number 30. So it's a lot of cool stuff. So what about, before we close out, what about kind of a Gambit? Let's talk about Gambit for a second. Gambit's a cool character. When they wrote Gambit, they said, we just want to make a dude that's cool. And that's what they did, man. What about our boy Gambit? They did Gambit dirty, man. What about Rogue and Gambit? This Gambit has been head over heels in love with Rogue for as long as I can remember. Rogue's always kind of like, he kind of gets on her nerves, but you could tell, I feel like X-Men97 episode 1, it was kind of a relationship going on there. And then Magneto shows up, and Rogue can touch Magneto, and it shows Gambit at the end. He's got the Queen of Hearts card, and she goes in the room with Magneto and shuts the door, and Gambit drops the card. That's like, what'd they do to our boy, man?
Yeah, that definitely hit me. Like, I was like, man, I'm not even super familiar with Gambit, except for like the rumors about like Channing Tatum possibly playing him, and I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't really know much about Gambit until watching the show, and so I thought it was cool. I was like, I could definitely tell. It seemed like they at least had some form of relationship kind of going on, or at least developing, and I was like, okay, cool. And then Magneto comes in all Magneto-like, and I'm like, man, what are you doing, bro? But at the same time, like, to play devil's advocate, I mean, I feel for Rogue too. Like, I get that, she probably, I mean, it would suck to not be able to touch people. Like,
yeah,
I would, like, I don't know, man. Like, that would just kind of suck in general. So, like, I could see where she would kind of desire that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, yeah, like, that's kind of messed up. You did my boy Gambit dirty. That's kind of...
This man,
Yeah.
He's about it. I love that Gambit loves Rogue, even knowing he can't touch her.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. I feel, so Gambit, Gambit and his love for Rogue is one of the main things you see. He's always crushed on her. Like I said, she kind of like goes back and forth with him. She, I felt like X-Men97 episode 1, they were really trying to show you that this is a relationship. They went and danced together. They were like together in every scene. And then Magneto shows up. I love it. Somebody said that big M on his shirt stands for Mr. Steal Your Girl. So, Magneto, man, he came in, he could touch Rogue. So there'll be a segment in the future on the broadcast called Proton Cannon. And Proton Cannon segment is going to be about what's canon and what's not in comics. So we're going to actually Proton Cannon right now in the middle of this segment is it canon that Magneto can touch Rogue? And it is. In the comics, Magneto and Rogue have several relationships. In fact, in the one of the alternate storylines, they actually have a kid together in the future. That's not the main, 616 storyline, but it is an alternate storyline. In the Savage Land, there's a whole little scene where they're kind of a relationship because Magneto can touch Rogue. There's multiple reasons why. Sometimes it's because he has like a magnetic barrier around his body, so she can't hurt him. Other times, there's just kind of been some different explanations, but yeah, that's canon. Magneto can touch Rogue. and not get killed by it. One argument I'm going to make, and I know this is very simple, but they have those collars they put on the X-Men. And when they put those collars on them, it turns off their powers. Can't Rogue just get one of those collars and put it on whenever she wants to not be using her powers? Surely Beast can build a smaller version, like a bracelet or a ring or something. Heck, man, have Beast make it be a wedding ring and you and Gambit get married. Let's go, right? But maybe I'm ruining their whole storyline, but that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I feel like that's valid. Now I kind of wish they do that. Hopefully they do that.
Who knows? All right, man. So we've kind of gone over the 3 X-Men episodes so far. I would say this is top tier X-Men. I would definitely say this is the best version of the X-Men outside of original comic books. They freaking nailed it. So kudos to the writers, the whole team that put this thing together. They have a love and a passion for X-Men, and you can see it on every panel, every scene, from the music to the cameos to the shout outs to the old comics to the shout outs to the old series. This team that made this, they love the X-Men, and it seems like they're on a really good track with these first 3 episodes. I can't wait to see what comes down the pipeline for this series. All right, Dylan, you got any more comments about that?
Not really, man. I feel like the show as a whole has been really fun to watch and get into, and especially exploring this different side of the X-Men that I'm not really used to, and I'm excited to see more.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right. So this has been the first episode of the Optic Blast Broadcast. We're going to be taking you through all the different comic book related storylines, news. Like I said, we're going to look at what's canon, what's not, who's your favorite, who could win in a fight. There's going to be some segments coming up in the future. That's going to be fun. We love to pit our favorite heroes and villains against each other. We'll pull out the stats. We'll figure it out. We'll do the deep math. We'll have Dylan in here with the new school knowledge. You'll have me with the old school knowledge. And we're going to try to solve some mysteries and just take you on a ride through the comic book world. Next time on Optic Blast Broadcast, we're going to go into our favorite webhead. I'm talking about New York City's hero, the amazing Spider-Man. Spider-Man, that's like one of the top Marvel heroes. When you hear Marvel, you see the Marvel logo. I don't know about you, Dylan. I immediately think of Spider-Man. Top tier superhero. Gotta love Peter Parker. Gotta love everything that goes on in the Spider-Man world. And he's a deep character to dive into. We're going to go over some new Spider-Man comics. We're going to talk about what's going on in the world of the webhead, what you can find on Marvel Unlimited. But it's going to be everything Spider-Man next time.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super excited for that. Spider-Man's one of my favorite characters of all time. Not just I guess I'm more so, again, just I feel like a broken record at this point, but I'm more so the movie kind of guy. So I'm Toby's my guy. Toby's Spider-Man. That's my Spider-Man. So I'm really excited to kind of dive in and get into some of the comic book versions of them, because I feel like everybody's always talking about how Toby isn't a very good version of the comic book character, but I disagree. I think he's great. But anyway.
Hey man, that's something we can definitely get into on the next broadcast, because being an old school head and you being a new school head, we're gonna come to some disagreements and some agreements about where Tobey Maguire pulled it off. We'll get into all of that. Hey, thank you guys so much for tuning into the very first episode of the Optic Blast Broadcast. My man Dylan here with me. We're excited about this broadcast. Hey, right now we're starting to build them, so by the time this comes out, you're gonna see them. We're going to have social media things up for us. You'll be able to find the Optic Blast Broadcast on your Instagram, your Facebook, your... hey, young man, what's that app you guys use that have videos on it? The TikToks. On the TikToks, man. You see it on there. So we're going to be able to find us on all levels of social media. Hipster Goblin Media is coming out with the website. We'll be on there. Definitely check out the Nerdy Reads podcast. Honestly, if you are listening to this, 99% of you, the Nerdy Reads podcast probably pointed you here. So definitely check those dudes out. And you might even recognize one of them from this,
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody so much for tuning in. Next time, we're going to go Spider-Man. Get your web slingers ready. Let's go save New York City. Thanks for tuning in to the Optic Blast broadcast, and have an awesome day.